So, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for our keynote speaker this morning, Mr. Baer.
Give a hater a hug, 'cause even haters we love. Tell a hater cheer up, just cheer up. Give a hater a hug, give a hater a hug, 'cause even haters we love. Tell a hater cheer up, just cheer up. Give a hater a hug.
So my good friend Erica is a big deal here, evidently, which is fantastic. She and I actually wrote a book together called Utility for Real Estate. And so I'm wondering if maybe, since I'm a tequila guy, can we move this event to like Oaxaca next year or Jalisco? We do like a whole tequila thing instead? That would be amazing. So look, it doesn't matter what business you're in, whether you're in multifamily or you're selling sandwiches or software or cars. At some point, some of your customers, some of your tenants, are going to have feedback. Like this. This is an actual review on TripAdvisor for a Chicago area location of the famous White Castle hamburger chain. Anybody ever been to White Castle? I'm in the Midwest. I don't really recommend it, but you know, proceed at your own caution. Here's the review.
While driving to the airport near the end of our Midwestern journey, I heard what appeared to be hyperventilating coming from the back seat of our rental car. My 16-year-old could not believe he was actually seeing a real live bona fide White Castle, and he begged us to go in. Now, since we were pretty early for our flight, we decided to go ahead and let him have his Harold and Kumar go to White Castle moment, a movie which he asserts is the greatest stoner film ever. Stoner film. Like there's a category for it at Sundance.
Like there's a category for it at Sundance. That actually sounds like a pretty positive review, but it continues.
I cannot believe that these people actually exchange real American currency for this square steamed mixture of rodent feces and sawdust on a tiny bun. This is the bastard love child of 7-Eleven microwavable meat patty and the entrail drippings of roadkill left to fester on Midwestern highways in the hot July sun. Happily, it's as thin as a Post-it note so as not to avoid inadvertently engaging your gag reflex.
So that took a turn for the worse. Just as an enterprise social media consultant, one quick tip here before we get into it. If you see a review that includes the words rodent feces, it's almost always negative. Almost every time. Now, the most remarkable thing about that review is that that is a 2-star review. That's a 2-star review. I really, really, really want to know what that person's 1-star review reads like if that's a 2, right? Now, of course, the natural human reaction, the reaction that I would have, probably the reaction that you would have, would be to ignore that, right? To dismiss that as the rantings and the ravings of a crazy person and just sort of like, whatever, man. But that's actually the worst possible thing that you could do. Not long ago, I conducted a massive, massive research project into the science of complaint. And I looked at who complains, why they complain, where they complain, and how. And what I found was simply amazing. I found that when you do not answer a complaint, it decreases customer advocacy, always and in every channel. It takes a bad situation and it makes it worse. Conversely, however, when you do answer a customer complaint, it increases customer advocacy in every channel and every time. And in fact, there's some fascinating research, not for me, but some fascinating research that shows customers are actually more loyal when they have a problem that you answered than if they never had a problem at all. When you answer a customer complaint, it takes a bad situation and makes it better. So what this means is that the people who complain, the haters, they're not your problem. Ignoring them is. So what we need to do instead is to embrace complaints, all of them, and use them to make your business better, to improve your individual properties and your companies as a whole. What we need to do is hug our haters. And what that means, in practice, day to day, is that you answer every complaint in every channel, every time. every complaint in every channel, every time. Instead of what we typically do, not just in your industry, but in all industries, which is to answer some complaints in the channels that we prefer when we get around to it. 1/3 of customer complaints are never answered, and almost all of those are online. Hugging your haters helps you keep your customers. This actually will make you money if you follow this advice. Here's a remarkable statistic. Each year globally, we spend approximately $500 billion on marketing and about $9 billion on customer service. Now, this is despite the fact that we know, everybody knows, that it makes more financial sense to keep the customers, to keep the tenants you already have, instead of having to fill the leaky bucket and churn them. And in fact, the reason that I started going down this road with Hug Your Haters and wrote a book about it and all those things is that in my business as a social media strategist and the work that my company does for big organizations all over the world, we found that all of these companies, including some in this room, are spending so much time, so much money, so much effort on how do we use social media to sell stuff, but are spending very, very little time, effort, and energy saying how do we use social media to keep the customers and keep the tenants we've already acquired. It's out of balance. 5%, just a 5% increase in customer retention can increase profits from 25 to 85%. There's a geometric multiplier financially around customer retention. And social media and online and hugging your haters is the fastest way to accomplish it. There are companies that are absolutely embracing this hug your haters formula to great success. And one of them that is perhaps unexpected is Discover. Discover Financial, they make the Discover card, among other things. And about 2 years ago, they said, look, financial services is very competitive. We got to compete against Visa and MasterCard and Amex and all these guys. One of the things that we're going to do to try and set ourselves apart is we are going to commit the necessary time, resources, and energy to be the most responsive financial services company in the world, on all channels. They said, our goal as a company is to answer every complaint in every channel, every time, within 15 minutes. Phone, email, social, skywriting, doesn't matter. That's their plan. So last year, this guy, Rob, who's out of Chicago, was on vacation, and he did not check his email on vacation, and good for Rob for that work-life balance. He comes back, and he has not just one, not just two, but 3 different email offers from the Discover card to take out a new card in that period. He thought that was a little over the top, as probably we all would, so he went to Twitter to express his displeasure. Here's what he tweeted.
I haven't checked my email in a few days, and there are 3 offers for the Discover card. Persistence or lack of coordination?
Persistence or lack of coordination. Now, most financial services companies, in fact, most people, including most of us in this room, would probably ignore that. It's not an overt complaint. It's not a, I hate you. It's just kind of griping. And you'd probably say, we don't need to get involved. That's not how Discover does it. Discover says, this is our differentiation. We are the most responsive. We are the fastest. We are the most human. They answered this back in 6 minutes.
At Rob Special, we must be excited to have you apply. DM with your full name and full address if you would like the mailings to stop. Amy.
Well done. We apologize. Here's an opportunity to make this stop, and let me use my name so you realize that I'm a real person and not a representative of a cyborg. This had a real impact on Rob. He tweeted back again in 7 minutes.
At Discover, kudos for the prompt response time. Okay, I'll bite. Mostly because of your response, Amy. Hashtag great service.
Hashtag great service. Here's somebody who specifically went to Twitter to complain, and 13 or 14 minutes later ended up taking out a credit card application because they were on top of it, because they hugged their haters. Now, you might think of this as a customer service story. But is it a customer service story? I submit to you that what this really is a one-to-one marketing story. And this is the way that brands are going to accumulate and keep customers now and in the future. Because customer service, my friends, is the new marketing. It is the differentiator. It is the thing that will set you apart. Do you know how many people in your local markets have a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath? All of them. What is different? Is your clubhouse that much better? Is your weight room that much better? Is your pool that much better? Is your lobby that much better? Is your parking that much better? No, it is not. The one thing that can set you apart is if you are genuinely better at customer service than your competition. And where that starts is online, which is why I'm so thrilled to have the opportunity to talk to this group, because you are my people. You actually have the opportunity to take these principles and put them into practice, not eventually, today. Today. Hugging your haters also makes you a better property owner and a better property manager, because those haters, those complainers, are the petri dish of operational improvements. Haters are the canary in the coal mine. Anything that's wrong with an individual property or your company as a whole, the haters will be the ones that tell you. You know what's the most overrated thing in business and frankly in life? The single most overrated thing in life is praise. Because it doesn't teach you anything you didn't already know. If somebody says to you, oh, you're so this, you're so that, and you're great at this, and you're great at that, 100% of the time, you already knew that. Praise feels great and has no educational value. Where we learn is from haters, is from complaints. 95% of unhappy customers, of unhappy tenants, will never, ever leave a complaint in a form or a fashion that you will see it. 95%. They may bitch about it to their friends, but they will not complain in a way that you can see it. So what that means is that the haters that you can see, whether it's in social media, review sites, etc., walking into the front office, what those people really are the unelected representatives of a much larger group, which I call the meh in the middle, right? The people who are like, I didn't like it, right? They just like, it wasn't for me. But they were never so passionate either way that they went out of their way to let you know. Recognize this, that haters and complainers are quite literally using their time and their resources to make sure you know what you did less than perfectly. That's a gift. It is a gift. It's free market research, if nothing else. So what I will tell you is that haters are your most important tenants, not your least important. And not just in this industry, although it's very prevalent in this industry, but in all industries, there is this culture of, well, they were unhappy, they're just a bad customer. We didn't want them anyway. If they're unhappy, we'll just get somebody else. It's the wrong approach. Haters are your most important tenants. And you can do amazing things if you embrace this free market research concept. One of the companies that does this really well is Le Pain Quotidien. And they're a chain of about 220 bakery cafes. They're based in Brussels, Belgium. They have lots of locations in the US, primarily in the Northeast. And their director of customer experience is Erin Pepper. And she started about 18 months or so, 2 years ago there. And when she started in that job, she said, I have one goal, and that goal is to triple the amount of complaints about our brand. Think about that. She wants to triple the amount of complaints. Why? Because every complaint is a learning opportunity. It's an opportunity to get better. If your goal is to minimize complaints, it's super easy to do that. You want to know how to minimize complaints? Let's say you get 80 complaints a quarter. You know how you get it to 50? Stop listening for them. Ta-da! Complaints dropped by 40%. It's that easy. She goes the exact opposite. She craves negative feedback. So when people complain about Le Pain Quotidien, typically for her it might be Facebook, Yelp, TripAdvisor, Urban Spoon, and other sort of restaurant review sites. So when she gets a negative review, she always answers back in public. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Always answers back, apologizes, etc. But it's what she does next that is so interesting from a market research standpoint. So in many cases, after she has responded to a hater, she'll let it sit for an hour or two, and then she answers again in private, using a private message on Facebook or a private message on Yelp, etc. And she says, you know, I've been thinking. And you are a particularly perceptive customer. You have a gift for this. You see things that other customers simply do not see. So what I'd like to do, with your permission, I'd like to send you 2 gift cards a month. And with each of those gift cards, I would like you to visit a different Le Pain Quotidien location. And upon the conclusion of your visit, I would like you to click this link and fill out this detailed survey of your experiences, because you have an insight that will make us better. And it totally works. She now has more than 150 of these secret shoppers working for her every single week, giving her incredibly detailed feedback about the little things that they can do better. Napkins weren't straight, not enough coffee stirrers. Total cost of that program? Some gift cards. Everybody can do that. Haters are free market research. Now let's talk more about haters in general. I want to introduce to you the hatrix. The hatrix is the analysis of who complains and where and why and under what circumstances. And in my research, I discovered there's actually 2 types of haters. 2 very different types of haters. The first type are called off-stage haters. And they're called off-stage haters because they complain in private. They complain almost always via the telephone, face-to-face, or via email. These offstage haters are slightly older, slightly less technology savvy. The other group of haters are the onstage haters. And the onstage haters are called that because they complain in public. They complain in social media, they complain in review sites, they complain in discussion boards and forums, they complain in places that other people can see it. They are, as you might suspect, a little bit younger, a little bit more tech savvy. Who here has ever complained about a company in social media? Yes, I figured this is the onstage haters audience of all audiences right here. It is you. You're the problem. No, you're the solution. So there are slight demographic differences, okay, between the offstage and the onstage, age, technology savvy, etc. But the demographic differences are not actually that important. The biggest difference between offstage haters and onstage haters is what they expect. What they expect of you. Offstage haters, people who complain in private, phone, email, in person, what they want, what they crave, what they need is an answer. They want you to fix the problem, whatever that problem is. In fact, 9 out of 10 offstage haters expect a reply when they complain, according to our research. And I'm sure the same is true of you. If you email a company, you expect them to email you back. If you leave a voicemail for a company, you expect them to call you back. If you wait on hold, it may be interminable, but you expect that eventually someone will answer the phone. It's just social contract. It's how business has evolved in the last 15 or 20 years, right? Everybody with me? So these folks want an answer, even when the complaint that they bring to you is bizarre, as is the case here, where this gentleman left a voicemail for the Jimmy Dean Sausage Company.
Randy Taylor, I don't know where you people come from. I don't know if you test your products, your quantity of your product. Your products are very delicious. Love your sausage for 30-something years, but I can't take and feed a family of 5 on a little 12-ounce roll of sausage. I don't mind paying you more money for your 16-ounce roll of sausage, but you don't have it anymore. You've got a 12-ounce roll. and you got 3 men that weigh over 200 pounds apiece, a woman that's a little plump Scotch girl, and a daughter who's 13, and you're going to try to take a 12-ounce roll of sausage and a couple of dozen eggs and feed that, it ain't going to work. And I'm not going to purchase your product anymore or ever again. And as far as your 16-ounce and maple and sage, I don't eat that. I'm not from the north. I'm a Texas man. Jimmy Dean sausage is for southern people to eat with the breakfast, with the fried eggs and the T-bone steaks. And I can't see going to a little 12-ounce package to feed 4, 5, 6 people. And I'm not going to buy 2 of those 12-ounce packages just because you want to downsize and charge the same goddamn price. I'd sure like a reply, and I'd sure like you to go back to your 16-ounce package on your regular sausage, because I'm not going to buy it otherwise ever again. I'll just have my own damn sausage made like I used to 30-something years ago. It's not tasty as yours is, but it'll work. Goodbye.
Let's hear it for Randy Taylor, a man with an acute sausage problem. I think more than I've ever heard before. How are you going to feed 24 eggs to 4 people? It's like, wow, I'm thinking like, that's 6 eggs a person. That should be sufficient. I'm starting to do the math there. I'm like, wait a minute. That's a plump Scotch girl. So who here wants to work in a call center now? Me. Not so much. So these are the kind of folks who expect a reply, even in those kind of circumstances. Now, the other side, the onstage haters like me and like you, onstage haters don't necessarily want or expect a reply. What we want when we complain online in many cases is an audience. An audience. That's why when you look at reviews, review sites, social media, etc., so much of the language in those places is very colorful, like the White Castle example that we listened to a moment ago. Because you don't really anticipate even that the company will get back to you, because most do not. Instead, what you want is all your friends to say, that really sucks, I feel really bad for you, that happened to me once, right? You want this group empathy tsunami, right, to wash over you and make it better. In fact, my research found that fewer than half of all of the onstage haters expect a response at all. So my friends, mathematically, this is the crux of the issue. Fewer than half expect a response. So when you actually do respond, guess what happens? It blows their minds and wins their hearts. If I ask you right now, name for me a business, not necessarily in your industry, but that'd be fine. Name for me a business that's really good at online social media customer service. Shout it out. Southwest, good. Anybody else? Okay, good. Virgin, yep, good. Interesting airlines choices. Okay, so here's an amazing thing. Many of you were able to shout one out. Many of you shouted out a few small names. And everybody here, even if you weren't prepared to shout out yet because you've been drinking too much, you thought of one. Everybody here thought of one, right? Except for that one person. Almost everyone here thought of one. And that, my friends, is the problem. We shouldn't be able to come up with one, because everybody should be doing this. There should be such a long list of companies that we know are great at social media customer service that to ask a question like, who's great at it, you'd be like, I don't know, lots of people. This is a huge opportunity for you right now, especially you folks who control how you behave in social media. You can blow their minds and win their hearts because nobody is doing this yet. Hardly anybody. Discover, yes, Southwest, JetBlue, Virgin, a few others, but almost no companies, and I can tell you firsthand, really almost no companies in this industry are hugging their haters. This is your chance. You have a window of opportunity. I say 2 years, we'll find out. Here's how it works mathematically. Answering just one customer complaint can increase that customer's love for your property, your brand, by 25%. Think about that at scale. What does that mean for some of you who have very large organizations? 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%. All of a sudden, your tenant churn rate is dramatically affected. Let's talk a little bit more about ratings and reviews. I think in this industry in particular, ratings and reviews, those websites, we love them, we hate them, we love to hate them. And I think this particular sign epitomizes how many businesses feel about ratings and reviews. I love this. Come in and try the worst rum and coke that one guy on Yelp ever had in his life. I want to get a t-shirt made of that. It's spectacular, isn't that great? Now, my friend Morgan Remmers from Yelp is here at the conference. She's going to give a session, I think, at 2 o'clock today. I very much encourage you to go. Morgan is fantastic. I talked to her a lot for my new book, and she's going to teach you a lot about sort of Yelp 201. It's really, really good, and it's important stuff. But I know we all have sort of a weird relationship with that kind of feedback, but folks, the genie's not going back in the bottle. 80% of Americans trust online reviews as much as we trust recommendations from friends and family, even though those reviews are almost always written by total strangers. We have sort of collectively decided, perhaps to the detriment of our society, but this is the math, that if it's online, it must be true, which is perhaps a disaster for society, but that's where we're at. People believe reviews. I do not care whether or not you believe reviews. Everybody else believes them, and that's why you see them on For Rent, you see them on apartmentratings.com, you see them in all these places, because it gives potential tenants a shorthand, a mathematical clue, whether or not your property is worth considering. And you ignore this channel at your own peril. People ask me all the time, okay, Jay, we've got a bunch of reviews. Some of them are older. Should we, even though they were a while ago, go back and respond to all of them because we didn't used to respond? Here's my advice. I think you should always answer at least 2 pages worth of reviews, whatever that sort of page depth is. So if, now the chances of somebody scrolling back 3 or 4 or 5 pages to look at all the reviews, it is possible. But the research shows it's a very, very, very small percentage of people who will go that deep. Usually people look at a couple pages like, yeah, I got the general gist. And that gives them the confidence to take the next step, or the confidence to definitely not take the next step, as the case may be. So if you're thinking, gee, should we go back and retroactively answer reviews? What I will tell you is answer at least the first 2 pages. People can scroll, next page, scroll again, make sure you answer those, even if it was 3 years ago. Be like, hey, we're terribly sorry we disappointed you. Obviously, it was a while ago, but we're really embracing online feedback now. If there's anything we can do to help you, please let us know. Okay? Now, when we talk about offstage haters and onstage haters, today, as we sit here, across the entire US and all businesses, about 2/3 of all complaints are offstage, telephone and email, about 2/3. 1/3 social media, review sites, etc. But that ratio is changing very quickly. Like right now, it's changing. Because it is obviously much faster and easier to complain on a smartphone, on an app, than it is to email somebody and or wait on hold. And probably everybody here has a story or has heard a story of somebody who called or emailed, didn't like what they heard, then they went to Twitter or Facebook, and all of a sudden they got a much better outcome, right? But he's heard those anecdotes. Every time that happens, companies are teaching customers, don't call, just go to social media. I have 2 children shown here. They are both in high school. This is my son's birthday recently, so there's birthday shoes. And so they, of course, have smartphones, as do we all. But for them, like no device in the history of devices is more poorly named. Because of all the things that device does, the one function that they have no interest in whatsoever is the telephone. No interest. They will text over and over, Instagram, Twitter. They Snapchat the way I eat bacon, greedily, lustily. But the phone is not important to them. And in fact, it's quite the opposite. They actively avoid it. If you give my son, who's 14, if you make him use the phone, here, talk to your grandmother. Here's how it goes. You talk to your grandmother. He's like, first you get the eye roll, which is always nice. So to get that, and then it's like, hello? Fine. 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 Okay. Hands the phone back, right? It's like a slow motion car crash. You can just see it coming. It's terrible. Now, I am not a demographer by training, but I am a parent and I am a student of consumer behavior. And I simply refuse to believe that 5 years from now, my children will be in some job, they'll have a cubicle or whatever, and they'll be sitting there in their cubicle and say, you know what I've been missing out on? The joys of telephonic communication. Like it's not gonna happen. So all these companies, some here, more in other industries, who have call centers, whose entire customer service infrastructure is built around answering the phone and responding to emails, they are screwed. Screwed. Because this balance between offstage and onstage is happening right now. Last year in 2015, social media complaints about businesses in the United Kingdom increased 800% in 1 year. And a lot of organizations are simply not prepared to move resources from offstage channels to onstage channels. There's a whole other question about whether it should be the same people. Whether somebody who has answered the phone their whole life should now be Facebook answering person. Your results may vary. Now you can do this at scale, right? You can understand the nature of this. One of my favorite companies in the whole world, and we mentioned a couple of airlines a moment ago, is KLM. KLM is the Royal Dutch Airlines. They're based in Amsterdam. They have what I think is the most remarkable social media customer service program in the entire world. They now answer 60,000 social media complaints and questions per week. They do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they answer in 14 different languages. If you tweet them at 3 in the morning in Turkish, they will tweet back by 3:15, 3:20 in Turkish. Last year, they accidentally sold $25 million worth of tickets. They are a customer service group. They are not a sales group. But in the course of doing customer service, oh yeah, we can do that. Here's a link. They accidentally, as their second priority, sold $25 million worth of tickets. And they got started on this journey not because they had this epiphany or said, hey, we want to differentiate the way Discover has done. They got started on this because of a volcano. Some of you may remember 5 years ago or so, the volcano in Iceland, which name I cannot pronounce. It's volcano. That's not, I think I may have missed one of the syllables there. So this huge ash cloud, and it grounded all the flights in Europe. Nobody could fly because of the ash, which is crazy. Well, KLM being based in Amsterdam, their specialty, Amsterdam in the Netherlands is not that big of a market. And so their specialty is to take people from here, stop in Amsterdam, and take them somewhere else. They're very much a hub airline. And so none of their customers could go anywhere. And so they were getting this massive amount of questions and complaints and panic, like how do I get out of Poland? And I can't make this wedding, and what am I doing? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And so they were like in full on crisis mode. And so they called a team meeting and said, okay, we got two options. We can either answer as many as we can when we get around to it, or we can find a way to answer everybody. But let's remember, if we answer everybody, we can never go back. We have to continue to do that forever, because you can't exactly say to your customers 3 weeks from then, great customer service in times of volcano. Like you can't, that's not a slogan that will work. You can't do that, right? So they said, okay, this is gonna be a serious commitment, and they said, do it. So they had all this extra labor because pilots couldn't fly, flight attendants couldn't attend, baggage handlers couldn't handle. They're just sitting around. So they just got a bunch of card tables and laptops and said, start typing. And they answered every single One. And they still do it today. In fact, they're so committed to this principle that if you look at their Facebook and Twitter backgrounds, they show how long you should expect to wait for an answer. And they change that graphic every 5 minutes. Isn't that awesome? Why doesn't everybody else do this? Why don't people do this? We know it makes sense mathematically. We know it makes sense financially. We know it makes sense from a market research perspective. We don't do it because we're in love with marketing and customer service isn't sexy. It's a necessary evil. But if you understand and believe that customer service is the new marketing, it starts to look pretty attractive, doesn't it? A couple of tips about hugging your haters. A couple of tips before I get out of here. First is we got to understand that it's really easy to take things personally, especially for smaller businesses, but really for anybody who's on the front lines. You know, when people complain, and sometimes they're really negative, you're like, wow, I feel personally attacked. And we can then sort of handle that response in a way that's perhaps not as good as it can be. We don't display the appropriate kind of empathy. The other challenge, especially for big companies, for those of you who are running multiple properties, who have lots of sort of balls in the air and lots of channels to support, I know the tendency is to say, well, let's come up with a few pre-approved, legally blessed, canned responses to common scenarios, and then when that happens, we'll just go response C, click. I understand the attraction of that from a resources perspective, from an efficiency perspective. But when you do that, when you rely on copy and paste because you don't want to put enough resources against this, it is robbing your interactions of the empathy necessary to trigger that customer love effect, which is the whole point of this exercise. Let me show you what I mean. My friend Chris Rund is a graphic designer. He lives in my hometown of Bloomington, Indiana, or at least where I live now. Chris has a cat. This is not Chris's cat. This is a stock photography. This is a stock photo of a cat. But Chris feeds his cat Meow Mix. Chris, for reasons that I think are ridiculous, has white carpet. But whatever, that's his choice. His cat, as some cats do, throws up, right? People have had a cat. Cats get hairballs. Cats are just, they're cats. So the cat is throwing up from time to time. And because he has white carpets, the cat's vomit is staining his carpet. And he thought that was a real problem. So he emailed the folks at Meow Mix, who makes the cat food that he feeds his cat. He said, hey, we got to work on this. Didn't hear anything back for a couple days. So now he's double angry, right? He's like, well, I have a problem, and I tried to get it solved, and I didn't get an answer. Now I'm really mad. So he was a private offstage hater, and he became a public onstage hater, right? He raised the stakes, and he went to their Facebook page, and this is what he wrote.
Dear Meow Mix, cats throw up pretty regularly. I figured you guys would realize this, being cat experts and all. With this in mind, why do you insist on putting dyes in your products that cause ruined carpets, furniture, etc.? You know, when Kitty spews her half-digested meow yuck all over the place. Seriously, my cat doesn't give a shit what your product looks like in a bowl, and neither do I. What would be helpful and appreciated by legions of cat owners, I'm guessing, is if you take the worthless dyes out of your product and save us all a lot of frustration and ruined fabrics.
So Chris is upset. I think the need for care and warmth here should be self-evident, but not to the Meow Mix Facebook page admin who wrote this reply.
Hi, Chris. All Meow Mix products are made with nutritious quality ingredients that meet the standards and specifications of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, Association of American Feed Control Officials, AAFCO, and the Food and Drug Administration, FDA. If you have further questions, our Consumer Affairs team will be able to help you. You can reach them at 1-877-MEOWMIX, 877-636-9649, or by visiting meowmix.com and clicking the Contact Us link at the bottom of the page.
That is not empathy. That is copy and paste. Let's try to not do that, because you see how that feels when you take it in context. Second tip for you is to obey Baer's rule of reply only twice. My rule of reply only twice goes like this. You never, ever, 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 ever reply to a customer more than twice in a row online in any channel. Because it is A, a waste of time, and B, likely that you will be sucked into a vortex of negativity. So if somebody says something nice about you, we love you, you answer back, thanks, we love you too, and they answer, no, we really love you. You answer a second time, no, we totally love you too. And if for some reason they go a third time, you just walk away. We've already hugged it out, it's all good. Fan club, we're done. A more common scenario, of course, is a negative interaction. Somebody goes on your Facebook page and says, I hate you, and you answer back, we're terribly sorry we disappointed you, we should talk about that. They come back again, there's no need to talk about it, you guys are the worst, I really, really hate you. You answer back and say, there must be something here that we can explore. We'd love it for you to give us a call or an email so we can talk about this in more depth, in a more nuanced fashion. When they come back a third time with some sort of outrageous whatever, you just walk away. Because you have given them 2 chances. You have apologized. You have given them a chance to contact you. You have given them a second chance to contact you in a more in-depth, nuanced capacity. You do not need to, nor should you ever, at this point, try to win them over. Because you have done what you need to do. You have hugged your hater. And if that's not good enough for them, at that point, it is okay. In fact, I insist upon it that you walk away. Because, yes, of course, you want to make that person happy. But that's not the most important person in the equation. What's more important is all the people looking on. All the people who are going to see this interaction on Facebook or on Twitter or on apartmentratings.com or any place online. My friends, customer service today is a spectator sport. And of course, you want to try and achieve those customer love benefits that we've been talking about. But in many cases online, what you're really trying to do is demonstrate to everybody else that you listen, that you care, that you're an organization that is going to have the back of their tenants. You're proving your value system in public. And when you get into a tit for tat, it can get really ugly really quick. Don't try that. One more tip, be fast everywhere. Speed matters. The folks in this room probably understand that better than most groups that I have a chance to work with. In social media, 40% of social media haters expect a reply within an hour. Okay, expect a reply within an hour, 40%. The average reply time for businesses in social media today is about 5 hours. So we're not really there yet in most cases. And while we almost always think of Twitter as the social media customer service channel, it's not actually true. The research that I did found that 71% of all the social media complaints are on Facebook. 71%. 17% on Twitter, 5% on Instagram, and the other is 7%. You're seeing a quick increase in the other category because you're starting to see more and more customers prefer and companies allow customer service interactions on Facebook Messenger, on WhatsApp, and in Asia on WeChat. And I know that you think, geez, that's going to be a lot of work if we have to answer everybody in all these places, and it is a lot of work. But most of you don't know this because you're too young, but there was a point in business, I had a typewriter in college, right? So I learned all these things, and there was a point that we had to actually make time in our day for email because there wasn't any email. And then all of a sudden email was invented and we had to devote resources to it. This is just the next step in devoting resources to a broader set of contact mechanisms. 71% on Facebook, which is a challenge, right? Because the way Facebook works, it's not always findable. Sometimes they're complaining about you on their own page, you'll never see it. It's a little bit tricky sometimes. Email is just as much of a culprit, if not more. Today, businesses take an average of 44 hours to reply to an email. That's almost 2 days. That seems like a really long time now. That's what happened to Chris in the Meow Mix situation. So he emailed Meow Mix, didn't hear back, took it public on Facebook, then he got an email back. They just didn't email him back fast enough. And because they were too slow at email, they had a situation they could have contained privately, and it became a whole public hullabaloo because they weren't quick enough at email. I see this all the time in business, right? Where the offline customer service folks are not doing a good enough job, and it puts enormous pressure on the social media team, enormous pressure. Because they're not coordinated in many cases, different teams, different managers, crazy. Speed matters on the phone, too. Here's an amazing stat. When people call and have to wait on hold, the single most important factor in whether or not they say that that interaction was positive is how fast they got answered. It's more important than truthfulness. It's more important than politeness. Quite literally, if you lie to somebody fast, they will be happier than if you tell them the truth slow. That is absolutely the case. And I think it's because nobody likes smooth jazz enough now to wait on hold. Really, I think that the call center industry is keeping Kenny G in royalties. Like that's his whole business model is just, if I can be the wait on hold guy, I am laughing all the way to the bank. So there are more and more of these haters, especially online, and I think we've learned that haters are not your problem. Ignoring them is. But haters can only see what they can see. And one thing I want to caution you about is, and I see this a lot, I've had conversations with people in this industry and others, where they sort of blame the tenant and say, well, they were lying about us, or that they left this review and it's totally wrong. That's not the way it actually went down. And I bet you have seen these same kind of circumstances. Haters only know what they can see. In many cases, when we're less than perfect, there was extenuating circumstances, right? Hot water heater went out, manager was out sick, something happened to the pool, whatever. There are legitimately good reasons why you fell short. But the hater doesn't know that. They don't know all the ins and outs of your business. They only know their tiny little slice of reality. And for them, that is truth. That is exactly what happened. And so in many cases, they're not lying. They just don't know the whole story. This happened to me a few years ago. Right after 9/11, you may remember that they paused for a week or so, and then they continued the World Series. I was living in Phoenix at the time. I was a season ticket holder for the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Arizona Diamondbacks ended up playing in the World Series against the New York Yankees. Game 7 of the World Series was in Phoenix. I was able to go to the game because I had season tickets. But this was right after 9/11, as I said, and it was tense, man. It was like a high, tense environment, and they brought in tons and tons of extra security. All kinds of different federal agencies, state agencies, plainclothes agencies. They were so concerned that they welded shut all the manhole covers for a mile around the stadium. So at the same time, my best friend since second grade ended up marrying my wife's sister. So my best friend became my brother-in-law. And I totally recommend that. If you can socially engineer that, 2 thumbs up, right? It's awesome. So this is before we had kids, and so just kind of the 4 of us palling around all together. It was great, and love and life, dinners all the time. It was super fun. I was 32, he was 32, we were all 32 years old, and he was diagnosed with brain cancer. And so we had to have a series of invasive brain surgeries. And one of the byproducts of that was that he lost the power of speech. Still knew what was going on, he just couldn't say anything. They cut that part out of his head. So he was originally from New York, my brother-in-law Al, and huge Yankees fan. So I've got tickets to Game 7. It's the Diamondbacks versus the Yankees. I knew there was only one person I was going to take with me to the game, my brother-in-law Al, the Yankee fan. So we go to the World Series, And the piece of information that I forgot to tell you was that my friend Pete, who actually had the tickets in his name, had lost the playoff tickets a couple weeks prior. I don't know how you do that, but he lost the playoff tickets. And so it wasn't that big of a deal. What we would do before each playoff game, we'd go to the will call window, show an ID, give them our seat number, and they'd say, okay, here. And they'd just print them out right in front of us on the little dot matrix printer. Back in those days, like, here you go. No big deal. So we go to game 7. And it's the first inning, and Al kind of pantomimes to me that he is going to go have a cigarette. And I know not socially acceptable so much now, but if you have brain cancer, I think smoke them if you got them is sort of my philosophy. So he goes on down the left field line, and there's an outdoor smoking area, and so he goes down there. So I'm watching the game, and an inning goes by, and another inning goes by, and I'm like, dude, where's Al? Like, he's missing the World Series. It's going to be the greatest cigarette of all time. So I'm like, I better go on the hunt just in case. So I leave my seats. I go down the left field area. I go out the door. I walk out, and I see Al in handcuffs up against a brick wall. And there's a security guard like in his face. So I bounce out. I'm like, hey, what's going on? What's this all about? He's like, are you with him? I'm like, yeah. He's like, boom, grabs me up against the wall, handcuffs me. So it turns out that because we had these funky reprinted tickets, which did not look like everybody else's big hologram special limited edition suitable for framing tickets, the assumption was that we had manufactured these tickets and were trying to infiltrate the World Series for a terrorist plot. Did not help at all that when questioned, Al remained silent because he couldn't talk. Like, why won't you tell me why you're here? And he's like, so it was the whole thing was not good. And so I'm in handcuffs, he's in handcuffs, up against a brick wall, outdoors, the World Series going on right there. And we sat there. And we sat there. And we sat there. And we were there for 5 innings. About 2 hours. And eventually, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted somebody that I knew who worked for the team. And I sort of hailed him. I couldn't actually hail him because I was on handcuffs. I was more like, hey, man. I was like, hey. And so he comes over, and I sort of say, handcuffs and like tickets. And he's like, oh, let me get a ticket manager. He goes get a ticket manager, comes back, says to the security guy, yeah, these guys are fine. It's all good. Unhandcuffs us. And that was it. No apology, no sorry for the mix-up, not a word. Just unhandcuffed us. So we get back to our seat just in time for the bottom of the 9th inning when the Diamondbacks win the game on what some say is the greatest play in World Series history.
Floater, center field. The Diamondbacks are world champions.
It was absolutely pandemonium in the stadium at that moment, and I'm really, really fortunate that I got to be there. Al died a few weeks later, and I was really bitter about that for a long time. About the whole thing, right? Lost my friend, and the handcuffs, and no apology, and I was like, blame everybody. But now, with some distance, I look at it much differently because I realize that security official was simply doing exactly what he'd been told to do. He was doing exactly what he'd been trained to do. In fact, he was behaving exactly right given his very limited knowledge of the situation. He didn't know that we had reprint tickets. He didn't even know reprint tickets existed. He didn't know that Al lost the power of speech due to brain cancer. He didn't know any of those things. Haters only know what they can see. So when you say that tenant is lying or that they've got it all wrong, make sure that you're not saying that when in fact it's just that they don't know all the information. You can be great at customer service. It requires you to answer every complaint in every channel, Every time. Every complaint, every channel, every time. Customer service is the new marketing. This can be the thing that differentiates you from all the other properties. Because your competition can and will eventually steal everything from you. They'll steal your pricing, they'll steal your amenities, they'll steal your website copy, they'll mimic your ads, they may try and hire away your best people. It's business. Your competition can and will steal almost everything from you. But the one thing they cannot steal, the one thing that is yours and yours alone, the one thing that they can never take from you is if you genuinely care more about your tenants than they do. That's what will make you the best. I'm Jay Baer. I'm hoping that you will hug your haters. Thanks.
Give a hater a hug, 'cause even haters we love.